it was Donald Trump's misinformation and falsehoods specifically that led to the scenes of chaos, violence, and rioting.
Misinformation is as old and falsehoods are as old as the human race. The medium changes, but the intent remains. So if you put out any information in public domain, the intention matters.
Constant propaganda that is, circulated over social media has real consequences.
There is absolutely no doubt about the fact that what we saw at Capitol Hill in Washington DC on 6 January was directly a result of the falsehoods and misinformation perpetrated by US President Donald Trump. He gave specific calls to his supporters to storm Washington DC on the day the electoral college votes were being counted and do whatever they can to overturn the results of the electoral college. Now, having done this, how did he go about managing to get so many people so effectively into Washington DC? The answer lies in social media.
To say that what happened in Washington DC was actually an outcome of his rants on social media would be a bit of a stretch. Because his influence goes way beyond Twitter, it goes way beyond social media. There are people who swear by him, who have probably nothing to do with technology, who have absolutely nothing to do with Twitter or social media. The devil is in the message, in the sender's intent, and not the medium.
Of course, the accountability lies with the person who has political power, but that person is using a social media platform to drive a narrative for his own benefit. So, what he's doing it very consciously. It's not like he doesn't know that his hate speech or his falsehood or misinformation will not have results, will not have consequences. He's doing it knowingly. So, we cannot depend on him to start suddenly have this realization, oh, my hate speech will have real consequences. As a social media giant where there are several people who are there on your side, you have to take that responsibility to let people know that what he's saying is not true.
Unlike the other forms, social media is also seen as an active publisher, which is not the case with, say, the post office or the telephone or the telegram, as used to be the case. Why? Because social media can actively see what people are posting, and social media, by the virtue of its design, has also the capability to restrict the flow of certain kinds of information that it deems as dangerous. So in this context, if the president of the largest economy and the oldest democracy is spreading falsehoods, then it is incumbent among social media to understand that this could potentially have very, very serious consequences. One that we actually saw on 6 January. Is that censorship? No, that is not censorship, because restricting posts like the ones that Donald Trump has put out could have prevented what we saw on 6 January.
I find this act of banning Donald Trump for 12 hours by different platforms a little problematic. Not a little problematic, actually quite problematic. And on many different grounds. The first is, of course, freedom of speech and expression and censorship. You cannot censor. Secondly, it is an act of tokenism as far as I'm concerned, because if these social media platforms want, they can keep their platforms clean and misinformation free if they want, if they are really serious about it. But are they?
In the name of not censoring someone, in the name of not, propagating, not curbing freedom of speech, you're letting unverified information reach millions of people. Coming to the second point, what Facebook, YouTube, Twitter are now doing is absolutely not enough, because right now Trump is going out of power. So now if you're doing, you're checking him, you are blocking him, you're locking him, that doesn't serve the purpose, because anyway, and I mean, are you really telling truth to power now? Because he is going out of power, right? So I don't think that's enough. But I wouldn't say that what they're doing is not important, because even with these facts, and at least for now, those kind of checks are important to tell a larger group of people that what he's been doing is not true, is not correct.
One must also keep in mind that they do bear an editorial responsibility, because they have certain community standards and guidelines which make them responsible to ensure that the content that is posted is not blatantly false, outright lies, and is not inciting violence or self-harm of any kind. Especially when the content is posted by somebody as influential as the commander of the world's strongest military, Mr. Donald Trump. What social media also does is that it enhances the scale at which misinformation can be spread compared to other mediums. So yes, they should be held accountable for specific kind of content which are part of their own community guidelines, and should also be held accountable to the extent that profit making does not triumph or trump over ensuring the safety of people.
Let's take this debate from Washington to closer home, Kashmir. In the 1990s, when the insurgency was at its peak, there used to be hundreds and thousands of people out in the streets of Srinagar and surrounding towns. And that happened without any WhatsApp, that happened without any Twitter, that happened because there was a common cause, that happened because people believed in a certain idea. How problematic or how kosher that idea was, that is debatable. The fact remains that people get behind a cause and they are willing to do anything in the physical world that they feel to be right, that they feel will get them closer to their goal, whatever that goal be. And if acts of violence are perpetrated in that process, the problem is with the message, with that goal, with the understanding of people. And when it comes to stopping the acts of violence, I don't think social media has a bigger responsibility than the state, than the almighty state.
Nobody is denying that, misinformation didn't exist in the past. But with the social media, with the advent of social media, it reaches a huge group of people. Also, there are different ways of this fake news, this misinformation to reach you now with social media more than ever before.
We have to be very clear that democracy is constantly being tested. Democratic ideals are constantly under this microscope, where there is this quest to find faults, and that's how democracies evolve and become better. But we have to understand one thing very clearly: the democracy flourishes only with more democracy and not less. So when we call for bans, when we call for censorship, we are demanding for lesser and lesser, and there is absolutely no end to that. Because when we seek banning X, ban to the Y is only a tomorrow away.